Well, as Labour's Shadow Minister for Europe and the Overseas Territories, I particularly wanted to come to Gibraltar to hear from the Government of Gibraltar and the people of Gibraltar about challenges they faced, the context post-Brexit, but also, given international events, also the strategic importance of Gibraltar is of particular interest to me. But it's been a fascinating visit. We've been very warmly welcomed. We met with the Chief Minister, we met with the Governor and many other representatives, saw the Gibraltar Parliament as well, and we've been made to feel very, very welcome here.
Useful to see it firsthand?
Absolutely. Certainly I've followed the negotiations and the issues closely. For Labour, it's absolutely clear to us that our support for the sovereignty of Gibraltar and support for the self-determination of the people of Gibraltar is unshakable, solid as the rock itself, and that commitment continues under the leadership of Keir Starmer. And I wanted to understand some of the issues practically myself. We've been down to the frontier today. We've heard from many representatives, and I certainly will be taking back a number of issues to my colleagues in Parliament.
Important that Labour puts that point of view across, because of course Labour, when it comes to Gibraltar, doesn't have that good a track record.
Absolutely, we want to make our position absolutely clear on that issue. I've taken a particular interest in issues affecting all of the overseas territories, but also given my particular responsibilities for Europe, and also particularly, as I said, in the international circumstance at the moment, our support of NATO, of working together with our allies, and of support for our armed forces, who of course play such a critical role here in Gibraltar. We met with the CBF, and our support for Gibraltar's role strategically is absolutely unshakable.
Are you satisfied that the UK government is doing enough on sanctions, but also on sanctuary for refugees? I know that Priti Patel yesterday announced visa relaxations for Ukrainian passport holders.
Well, on the broad principles of the government's policy, we may have many disagreements with them, but at times like this, it's important we stand together as a country. The House of Commons is certainly united. You'll have seen that in our response to President Zelensky the other day, and we are supporting the broad principles of what the government's doing on sanctions. However, we don't think they've moved fast enough. We don't think they've moved deeply enough or broadly enough. In fact, actually, we've heard here of how Gibraltar has moved forward very quickly on sanctions, actually sanctioning more people than the UK has itself. And I will certainly be taking that message back. And on welcoming people seeking sanctuary, again, Vivek Cooper, my colleague, has made very clear that we don't think the government's done enough. We need a humanitarian sanctuary, humanitarian protection route. We need to get a grip on the situation. The Home Office simply hasn't been getting a grip on the situation. We'll wait to see whether the changes announced today make a difference. But I've just been reading in the Gibraltar news that the Rock itself has welcomed people from Ukraine just in the last few days, and that kind of warmth and hospitality is exactly what the UK needs to be showing to people fleeing this terrible conflict.
We've seen the EU gel together against the threat of instability in Europe. What role do you feel the UK plays, especially when it's been left out after Brexit?
I think the reality is that when it comes to a crisis like this that affects all of Europe's security and indeed Euro-Atlantic security, that not only it's important that we come together as NATO, but also that we are working in close cooperation with the EU and indeed with other allies around the world, whether that's the United States, whether that's with Japan and others, because it's important we all send a signal to President Putin that this illegal war, this terrible invasion that he's undertaken must end, and that the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine must be ensured. And therefore, I think it puts into contrast some of the, I would say, more rhetorical approaches that the UK government's taken to European relations in recent years to one side. We're all working together, and I think that cooperation is absolutely critical.
So I'm the Shadow Schools Minister, and I've been focusing on calling the government out on ventilation, on vaccination and testing, and we think the government have not prioritised our schools during the pandemic, and it's really important that they are a safe place for children to learn and play together, and that's why we've said the government have got to go further on ventilation, on vaccination and testing. But also I'm really conscious that children missed out on so much during the pandemic, and that's why Labour set out a really ambitious recovery plan to support children learn and succeed.
You mentioned challenges in education and disruption. Of course, this year we're going to have pupils sitting A-levels with no experience of having sat any important exam before.
Well, I'm really conscious about young people who've missed out on so much. They've had to move to remote learning, they've had to move to learning online, and they've not had the best chance to succeed at school. And I'm deeply worried about government plans around exams. They left it too late to make announcements, and that's why we said that they should have done that much earlier than they have done. We're going to be watching really closely what the government will be doing, and I'm talking to head teachers on a regular basis to make sure that children are supported with important exams this year.
Well, I know that as part of your trip you visited the university today. What do you take from that?
I was really impressed with Gibraltar University and took away lots of things. It's a really great facility, both in terms of giving people the skills that they need to succeed in their careers, but also a really good learning opportunity. And I've been really impressed by the investment that the government have put in place here. I've seen the fantastic schools just from the outside, the investment in the buildings, but also the investment in skills. It's really impressive and something that I'll be taking back to Westminster.